Well, hello there, Phil.
Hello, Paul.
What do you say we tell all these nice people, even the ones in the cheap seats, about Tableau's new Viz Animations?
Sure, let's do it. But first, we're going to play a little game.
Just use the arrow key.
Okay, so it may not seem it, but I swear this is relevant to data visualization and animations in Tableau. So this little doggy here is going to keep track of which cup contains a treat. I want you to try and follow along. So it's fun to watch games like this. It's not too hard to follow the shuffling action. It takes a little bit of concentration, it's a bit challenging. You kind of get into a flow state. And that's part of what makes it engaging. Smarter than my dog. Okay, raise your hand if you guessed the correct cup. Anyone? Anyone out there in the bleachers? No? Okay. All right, so Paulie now is going to make some sense of this for you.
We'll get back to that little doggy in a few minutes. But first, this is why we're here. Tableau Viz Animations are coming to Tableau early next year. And boy, am I glad. I've been working towards this for almost 5 years. So I come from a 3D computer animation background. Things like game engines, animation for movies, tools for modeling and animation, and 3D user interface. I moved to Tableau from Pixar because data seemed to be a wide open frontier when it comes to motion and interaction. And for me, I've always said that it's the motion that excites me. I don't really care if it's dinosaurs or boxes. In fact, simple shapes in motion have an elegance that interests me as much as characters. So I came to Tableau in part to see if that was really true. And spoiler alert, the answer is yes. I initially joined Tableau to work on Visible, which was an iPad app for interactive data exploration. And that's where we cut our teeth and experimented with what it meant to explore data with animation. Since then, I and others have been working to bring the best of that project into Tableau Desktop, Server, Public, and Mobile. And at last, we have arrived. The new Viz Animations bring Tableau to life by bridging each moment to the next with smooth transitions. And if you want to get your hands on this feature before it releases, you can get access to our alpha and beta releases. Visit the link that's shown here, or get a handy reminder sticker from one of us after the end of the presentation. Oops, oh no.
Okay, so I arrived at Tableau 6 years ago. I came from Microsoft, where I worked on everything from search engines to social networking apps. I'm a huge space data nerd. I love creating vizzes with NASA's open data. I'm happy if you're happy. I'm the overall product manager for dashboarding, data storytelling, interactive objects, and now Viz Animations. You can think of me as your advocate on the dev team for creating beautiful, expressive dashboards. So enough of that. Let's talk about animation. So Tableau's mission is to help people see and understand data. And we feel that our new Viz Animation feature helps you do just that. And today, we're going to show you how.
So our talk today has 3 major themes: see, understand, and share. Viz Animations help you see new things, namely changes in your data. And the ability to see those changes helps you to understand more about your data and also more about how Tableau works. And when you share these dashboards that include Viz Animations, you share those new insights with your audience who benefit as well.
Now, to show you how animation helps you solve real-world problems and show you new things, we're going to return to that game with our little dog. But this time, you're going to have to play Paulie's version of the game.
Okay, let's play again one more time, but my video has a slight change from Phil's. Once more, see if you can follow the treat from start to finish. So it's a little harder this time. It's a little harder to follow when you can't see the transitions between each swap of the cups. And this is because something is missing. What's missing is something that we take for granted in the real world, and something called object constancy. It's what helps us mentally bridge from one state of affairs to the next. It helps us with flow. And in Tableau, we haven't really had object constancy. Things have changed very abruptly until now.
Okay, so here's a scatter plot moving forward and backward through time via the pages shelf. So in Tableau today, it's hard to follow the marks because just like in that second doggy video, the transitions are missing. I want you to pick a mark and track it with your eye as I step through time. Not so easy, right? In fact, without the color encoding or labels, it's nearly impossible. Let's see with animations. Click on. And again, I want you to pick a mark and track it with your eye. So all of a sudden, you can see more. That's because the Viz animations connect the moments together, just like the missing sections in that doggy video, right? And so another way to think about it is that there's a new object constancy. You can see the marks, and you can see how they're changing.
An animation is not restricted to marks within a viz. When you arrange pills on the row and column shelves, entire panes or small multiples can appear, they can disappear, or they can rearrange. And just like marks, these panes can be hard to follow. So here we see 3 line charts. With animation off like it is today, if you remove, if you remove one of them, or put it back, or if you swap 2 of them, it can be a little hard to know which one was which or which one it actually was. But when you animate the transitions, all of a sudden, you know exactly which one is leaving, you know exactly where it's coming back, and if you swap positions, you know which ones are changing. This is now crystal clear because of object constancy.
Okay. Got that?
Yep, I'll set this up.
So highlighting helps you keep track of particular marks in Tableau. But selecting multiple marks can sometimes reveal new insights, especially when you animate the changes. So let's switch this to demo.
So by the way, we're going to be switching back and forth between slides and demos, and if you think we're working on a demo and you're seeing a slide or opposite, just let us know.
Okay, I'm going to select 2 marks, like so.
Animation off, yeah.
Animation's off. I want you to watch as I filter. So, you've seen the marks separate, and you can distinguish them among the masses. But which mark went where? It's hard to tell. Let's see that again with animation on. Now you can see, in fact, that they traded places left to right, and that wasn't obvious before.
So part of why Tableau animations help you see changes so easily is because of how we have designed our transitions.
So at the outset of this project, we had some very open brainstorming. We had some real opportunities to digress, to explore without the confines of Tableau.
We thought about things like giving marks personality or agency.
And we talked about using the laws of physics. Apple's entire UI is based on a spring and damper physics model, and people love it. So we talked about stretchy bars and squashy circles and flocks of marks like birds.
But we also took a good hard look at Tableau's best practices for communicating with data. And many of these focus on clarity and simplicity. We wanted to create animations that were in service of those goals especially.
So when considering most aspects of your viz, Tableau helps guide focus with economy by supporting your use of so-called preattentive attributes. Now, these are views that help you see without trying. So for example, Tableau's color palettes are built to help create contrast in the preattentive attribute of color, so you can more easily spot differences. And the layout system, it creates default sizes and widths that help you take advantage of those preattentive attributes as well.
Well, motion is also a preattentive attribute. Let's investigate. So data people love outliers, and preattentive attributes of motion help you spot a new kind of outlier. So here's another scatter plot, and it has just 2 days of data. I'm going to switch between the two of you, and I'm going to time you with a song, one of my favorites from Sesame Street, and see if you can spot which of these marks is the outlier. One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you guess which thing is not like the others before I finish my song? So raise your hand if you think you know which of these marks is the outlier.
Anyone? Anyone out in the bleachers?
Anyone? No, okay,
No,
not too
anyone out
good.
there?
Well, I'm going to turn on animation now. I'm not going to sing anymore because I don't think it'll take as long. And look at this. Do you see one mark that's doing something different than the others? One of them is moving in a different direction. So that's a new kind of outlier for us to think about. And that's something that might merit further investigation later on. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this motion, part of what makes it easier to spot that different mark is because our motion is so clean and clear. We add nothing to it. We don't let the marks start at different staggered times. We don't put anything springy in there. We don't add any kind of curvature. That's because if the motion is super direct by state, then the states are going to rearrange as clumps of marks for the cities within their region. And last, if you sort by region, whole sets of states move around together. And that's easy enough to follow with me explaining it to you and talking you through it. But when you see it in motion, what takes a while to describe with words is instantly clear. Here we have cities sorting. Here are states doing something kind of different than we saw before. And last off, we'll do regions. Now, when transitions bridge these gaps, you don't have to take as much time to explain it because there's a way that we understand that motion immediately, right? It's instinctive, it's preattentive.
So unless you fix your axes, Tableau automatically zooms your viz to fit a range of values for the marks in the viz. Now if you add and remove marks with a minimum or maximum value, the ranges change and Tableau automatically redoes its framing. Let's take a look. So here the marks represent cities and they're grouped and colored by state. We're filtering on state. Now, let me make sure that the animation's off first. Now, auto-framing is useful for showing the right presentation for each set of marks. But, as I filter, the changes can be jarring. So, let's try that with animations on. Now you'll see that those jarring changes are replaced with a constant push-pull. If I say, remove a state with a big range, like Arizona, the viz zooms in to reveal more detail. When I add it back, it reappears, everything moves out to create more space. So you can think of it that this is a motion pattern that's easy for us to understand.
MarkIDs are how Tableau makes object constancy work. Every mark has a unique MarkID that distinguishes it from all the other marks, and that MarkID stays the same from viz to viz. So, if there's one dimension in your viz, like month, the MarkIDs are going to be January, February, March. They're taken as the names, the strings associated with each dimension strung together. So with one dimension of month, you'd have January, February, March. If you have more, like here, you string them together. So here we've got month on the column shelf, and we've got segment on color. So this mark here, and we've put those names in the tooltip so that they're easy to see. Here we've got March consumer. You can think of the March of the MarkID for this as being March consumer versus March corporate, April consumer, April corporate. And when we make changes to the measure that change where they are, that ID won't change, right? My identification is I'm Paul, and if a measure like my age changes, I'm still Paul. So these filters here are going to change the measure values that determine where they go. So let's look at this one. This is December consumer, and when I do some filtering, that's still December consumer. And so what the animation system is always doing is it's looking any mark that appears before or after your action in the viz, it knows to bridge those together. So here's that December consumer, changing location to the other December consumer. We do a smooth interpolation of the position, of the size, of any parameter that determines the look of that mark. Let me just check. Yes. So one small note for the sharp-eyed among you, if you think about pages, I'm going to put the order date on the page shelf, okay? Well, now this MarkID is September Consumer 2014, and when I page, it's got a new MarkID, September Consumer 2015. I thought you said that all the dimension values get strung together. Well, if there's a dimension on the page shelf, that's removed from that MarkID calculation so that a mark can move from one page to the other. Okay.
Presentation. So knowing about MarkIDs unlocks some nice techniques for working with calculations and parameters. So you can keep the same set of MarkIDs by putting them on the details or color shelf. And this turns out it frees up the rows and columns so that you can add calculated fields and move those marks around based on user input. Okay.
So here's a demo where we've done just that. Okay. The subcategory dimension has been placed on the color and label fields. So the label is actually telling you the equivalent of the MarkID here as well. And this demo will also show you that labels were animating as well as marks. So all the identification is here on these shelves, freeing up the rows and columns to have calculations that we'll be able to slide these points around. What we do is we've got a parameter and a calculation pair for rows and another pair for columns. Here, so is the column selection is going to pick between different measures. Discount, profit, quantity, and sales. And just to give you a peek at that, if you're not super familiar with parameters, this is the thing that describes the parameter. We have 4 strings: discount, profit, quantity, and sales. Equivalent for the row selection, but we need 2 different ones because we're picking 2 different things. Up here we've got a calculation for rows and one for columns. Let's find the row selector calc and take a peek at that. It's very simple. All it's going to do is look at the row selection parameter. If that's discount, it's going to throw average discount use that for the measure. If instead the parameter is profit, it will use sum of profit, etc. for the other two. And that's going to happen in each dimension. None of this is anything new for Tableau. You can do this, you've been able to do this for quite some time. And if you do it in Tableau today, you get a result like this. All the marks change, awesome, different parameters, different measures. But when you turn animation on, something else becomes apparent, which is that when you change the columns, the height of each mark stays the same and they slide left and right, as opposed to when you change the rows, they slide up and down. One other thing here that I found kind of interesting, that I felt like the patterns of the motion of the marks helped me to understand something in the data. Here we've got discount and discount, so everything's up on a nice diagonal line because for each mark, the measures are the same in each dimension. If we leave discount the same on columns and change rows from discount to profit, we see something kind of cool here. The marks on the left side that have a lower discount rise up. Lower discount, higher profit. The ones on the right that have the higher discount lower down, lower profit. And so there's this thing about the motion that reinforces what we intuit about these different measures. And you might be tempted to further investigate why tables seems to have this much bigger drop, which is accentuated by the fact that it's moving faster and farther than the other marks.
Switch.
Over to you, Phil.
Okay, so there are all kinds of powerful calculations in Tableau. There are table calcs, LOD, others, and animation helps you understand and show what they mean. So Jock McKinley is a technical fellow here at Tableau, and he's been exploring this idea to produce some startling effects in the service of data storytelling. So we're going to show you one, a very cool one, and then encourage you to go see his talk and some others. So Jock's talk is later this afternoon. So there's another slide here. Okay, and let's switch over.
There you go.
So just as in the previous example, Jock has his marks all specified on the detail and color shelf. But he's added a parameter with two values that's used to drive a calculation. Depending on the value of the calculation, the value of the parameter, the calculation changes to Viz from one showing the years in series, that is year after year over the long haul like you're seeing here, to another showing all the years at the same time or in parallel. Now watch, I think you're really going to love this. Oh, sorry, that's not so cool. Let's try that with animations on. Now you'll love it. Want to see that again? So what's really startling about this for us is that he manages to do all of this in let me see, open this. So he manages to do all of this in just a few but powerful lines of calculation. So, and here he's showing you the difference in years in series versus years in parallel with the parameter as an input. So, look, if you're just starting your journey with Tableau, we don't want to worry you with all this stuff. We're just showing you a future that you can work towards. But if you're an advanced user, we want you to see this as a call to action because there's a whole lot more to explore.
So now that you've heard a bit about how animation can help you see and understand more about your data, let's talk about how that's going to affect the people that you care about, your clients, your coworkers, your audience, and your friends, because animation is something that you can share.
So when you build a dashboard and share it with the world or like others in your organization, you're not always there to talk them through it. You have to hope that your audience will understand what you're trying to communicate. So depending on their level of experience, they can be easily disoriented or confused. Isn't that right, Paul?
That's right, Phil. So I mentioned at the beginning of this talk that I came from 3D computer graphics and animation background. What that also means is that I knew nothing about data when I interviewed for Tableau. I didn't know what a dashboard was. I really was super duper newbie. And what they said was like, oh, go check it out. Like, go look at some of these vizzes online and go play with dashboards. And so I went and I saw something like this. This is, I think, straight out of Superstore. It's one of the first things anybody sees. And I went, and so now picture yourself as inexperienced, as stupid as I was when I first started. So I go to this thing, it's like, oh, that looks pretty. And I click this thing, and I was like, felt really stupid all of a sudden. I didn't understand what had happened. I wasn't clear on whether I'd gone to another page or what I was doing and what was going on. Imagine instead, if on that first click with Tableau, my first interaction with Tableau, this had happened instead. I might not understand everything that's going on, but at least I know, oh, I did something and it responded and I'm in the same place. Let's figure out what just happened. It would pull me in instead of making me feel insecure. The same thing is going to happen with your most naive users as well. All of these things that we're showing you are going to help people who know less than us get acquainted with data and feel more comfortable working with it when you share what you have with them.
So throughout this talk, you've probably noticed us turning the animation on and off in the side of the application. So that's the animation formatting pane. And it contains all the controls that you use to set up your animation in your workbook so that your audience can see them the way you want them to. All right, let's cut over. Okay. Right, let me just fix this real quick. So, before I get into that though, I want to say that the animation pane is available in web edit mode on Tableau Server and online, and then public soon, as well as in Tableau Desktop and in Tableau Public. It's the same experience. So let's take a look here.
You are cut over.
Am I cut over now?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to Format, click Animations, and there it is. Now you can do 3 things in the animation pane. The first is you can turn the animations on and off. You can also set the duration. So there are 4 presets for the duration: fast, medium, slow, and very slow. So here, if I click on 1 second, and I click on China, I click that again, you'll see that's the duration. I'm going to go here and set it to 0.3 and change it again. Now you see the difference. As well, I can go down here to Custom and enter 3 seconds. And then when I click that, there's a custom duration. Now in the side pane, you can also set an animation style. But before we get into that, let's dig a little deeper into what the duration is about.
So people ask us a lot, what's the best duration? And for the most part, it's a matter of preference and a matter of the situation. I always say it's kind of like cooking, right? You should always like salt and taste it before you serve it to your friends. Well, vizzes are the same. You should always check out your durations, make sure that they work the way they look best, the way you like them best, before sharing it with your friends. That said, there are certain patterns that seem to be recurring. Most people tend to prefer a shorter duration for analysis. The first 2 presets, 0.3 and 0.5 seconds. For presentation, people prefer slower, 1 or 2 seconds. Everything we've shown you thus far, I think, has been at a 1 second interval, except for that duration demo. And when you want to get a real close look at something, if maybe you're a little confused or you want to just understand it better, that's when you might even want to slow it way down more and use that custom setting. And now let's talk about animation style. So sometimes one single action results in many changes. For example, when we saw the non-slicing filters, marks faded out and there was a closing motion. Well, all the changes all the changes in the animations you've seen today fall into one of 4 categories. Marks will exit, marks may move and change measure, There may be a new sorting for the marks, and marks can enter. Well, those of you familiar with D3 will recognize the enter, move, exit paradigm. We've added sort as a first-class citizen, and when we string those four together, we call that a sequential animation. If we play them all together, it's a simultaneous animation. One other note, if we're doing them in sequence and something's missing, we just leave that out and string the rest. So if there's no reason to sort and nothing's exiting, we'll just do a move and an enter.
So again, under the hood, our animation system breaks down every animation into those four stages: exit, move, sort, and enter. And again, for any sheet, you can choose to display them as end-to-end sequential or as a simultaneous animation. So let's see how the two work for an action that contains all four phases or stages of animation. So I'm going to go down here to the filter. Notice that I have the style set to simultaneous. I'm going to go down and filter. Now you notice they're all exiting, moving, sorting, and entering. There's a lot happening there. Let's take a look at it with sequential. I'm going to set this to sequential. And now, as I make the change, you'll see marks fading, exiting, they're moving, sorting, and then entering. So it's really easy to understand this way. And it's great for presentation, but those stages take longer, so it's a trade-off. So in general, if you're finding your animation confusing, set it to sequential and see if that clears things
up. One more thing about the animation format pane, you can have different settings for different sheets. And when you save and publish, all of those settings will be remembered. What? Sending data to server? I don't know. Something is happening unexpected. Let's see. There we go.
Oh. Okay. There we go.
All right. Let's cut over here now. So, thus far, we've only been working in this top area here, and that applies to the entire workbook. So, here I have a dashboard with two sheets on it. Right? Everything is going at this super slow, 3-second sequential animation. If I put that back to simultaneous and 1 second, notice that it's going to change that way here, and it's also going to change that way on all the other demos that we've been using in this workbook. But if I pick an individual sheet, there's an area on the lower half, and I can set values for on-off, duration, and style that differ and are special for just that sheet. You can make every sheet in your workbook different or leave them all the same. So for example, staying with workbook wide, so it will affect both of these, at 1 second, if I do a simultaneous animation, I like the look of the top. I like the way the marks are going because they're doing a crossfade. But the bottom one is a bar situation, kind of like what we had in the last demo. And I'd rather have that one be sequential. Well, if I make them both sequential, then the map marks, they all like fade and then re-enter. Oh wait, sorry. Yeah, they fade and then re-enter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the workbook on simultaneous because that's what we're using more, and I'm going to pick just this one sheet, and I'm going to change that one to override and use sequential. Now what's going to happen is when I make changes, the top one does its crossfade together and the bottom one does its sequential animations.
Okay.
Yes. So you can do it to your taste, make each viz look the way you want it to, and when you publish, your dashboards will have that quality to them. Okay.
Okay. So I think you'll agree that our users can now express themselves in new ways using animations. So recently we released an alpha around the same time that I went to London to meet with customers and our community there, including some Zen masters. So people tried it out for themselves. They started instantly experimenting with new ways to show things about their data. They played with parameters and actions. They took existing vizes and tried them out. They started posting their results on social media, especially Twitter. And here's some of the things they came up with. So I was standing next to Andy Kriebel, one of our Zen masters, when he installed the build and he started playing with the parameter actions and then tweeting about it right there. So here's a tweet in which he's switching between 3 sorting measures with animated transitions. It's pretty cool. Now here's the incomparable Reid showing what happens when you change between different months to begin a forecast. I just think this is really lovely. And last off, we have Chris Love's If the World Were 100 People tweet, showing how Viz Animations can bring to life information about demographics. So until a few days ago, we had no idea how he had done this, but then Paulie and I sat down with him for coffee, and he went into the details of it. Still not fully understanding what's happening, but it's really beautiful, I think.
Have a better idea.
It's better. Okay, so now Paulie's got another social media tweet.
Yes. So, of course, arguably the year's most viral data tweet was Matt Navarro's bar chart race of the 15 best global brands. This came out in February of this year, and people loved it because it brought life and immediacy to what was previously just a bar chart, and it was not created in Tableau. So shortly after, a lot of Tableau users started publishing articles and delving into how could we maybe recreate this sort of thing in Tableau, and several articles appeared online describing that, and they kind of got pretty complicated, in part because they were trying to do what we're doing here today automatically in addition to everything else. Well, so here's an article of one by Ludovic Tavernier, which gave me the hint I needed. See this thing, rank unique here? That is a method that you can use in a calculated field that will sort things according to rank. And it's exactly the key that helps me show you how to build a bar chart in 2 minutes.
Time.
All right. You can time me if you want, but I may not actually make it in 2 minutes. But all right, here we go. So we start with an empty sheet. The first thing you need is a data set. I'm going to use the Hans Rosling data set, kind of in honor of Hans Rosling, who put data animation on the map and who spoke here at TC in 2014. The next thing you do is you need to pick your erasers. Remember, the MarkIds identify your erasers. We'll pick one dimension, and you can use any dimension in your data set for your eraser. Here we've got continent, country, region. I'm going to use country as the erasers. I'm going to put the erasers on color and put the erasers on label. Now we have a label and a colored mark for each eraser. Now, what are they going to erase about? That's any measure you want. Here we've got GDP, life expectancy. I'm going to erase our countries in terms of population, if I can, undo. Oh, great. Undo is great for my timing, isn't it? All right. Population up to the top shelf there. Awesome. Now, here comes the trick. We need a calculated field that uses that rank unique. So we're going to create a calculated field, call it my rank. We're going to put in this method rank unique. The unique part just means if you have a tie, they don't go on the same line. And then here's the thing. Whatever the measure is you're racing on, you throw that in as the argument to rank unique. So if we were racing something else, whatever was on that pill, that goes in there. Check the calculation is valid, hit OK. Now we have a calculated field for our ranking. We're going to put that on rows, and here's the second part of the trick. You need to compute that relative to your erasers, which is our country, and you need to make it discrete instead of continuous. Now we're all set up. The only thing we need is time to race on. I'm going to put the years in the pages shelf and go to a more interesting spot and hit play. And now we've got our bars racing in population over time.
Just about 2 minutes.
How much time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Good.
All right.
Good job.
Sweet. So one last thing here. we've been talking about claiming that all of this stuff runs on server and it's all the same, and you know, if you were at Devs on Stage, you saw the page shelf on server. Well, to keep us honest, assuming that it's fast enough, I'm going to publish this workbook to a server that we've got back at Tableau. And hope it gets started. Come on. Yeah. Okay. This may take a minute depending on connectivity, so I'm going to talk a little more about this bar chart race I just built. Because those of you who are really into this and are following the bar chart race probably noticed already that this isn't behaving exactly the same. The bar chart races that have been more popularized, they've got the marks when they swap places are kind of floating really slowly as the years tick by. We've been talking about here all day today is that we do bridges, we bridge our transitions from state to state. And so we're always going to swap during one tick of the page shelf. To get things to go on those two different timelines is not something that we've worked out yet. So we think that this will get you part of where you want to go, but we also like to be super honest and tell you what we are really doing. So I'm going to publish this now. I probably should have pressed that button while I was talking before, because that's what I was going to be like talking about while this happened.
I was about to reach you.
So there's another thing I can talk about the page shelf, which is the durations that we showed you, those will change the length of your durations. But if animation is off, the page shelf still has those 3 speeds. With animation off, that's your pause between frames. With animation on, it's your pause between transitions. So if you're on the fastest page shelf setting, you'll go transition, transition, transition. If you're on a slower one, it'll be transition, hold, transition, hold, transition, hold. And we're still sending data to the server. What do we do? Should we?
The cooking show trick.
All right. I'm going to go all Julia Child cooking show on
He's doing a very risky maneuver.
And
it's a server back in Seattle
we've got
that all
one
our
that's
engineers
already
are
up,
using.
and maybe when it's done, we can prove it to you if that happens while we're here. But so this is the one I published up when I was practicing earlier and trying to figure out which connection was the fastest. And it's still slow. We got this one here. Okay. So just so you see, we've got the tabs at the bottom. These are our workbook. This is a race, kind of like I just built. And here's that page shelf. Going to hit forward. And life with servers at a conference. Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Are we moving? Publishing over the thing we were just looking at. Okay, but, so here's what I published. So now, at least we'll be more honest. So it's done. These are all of the tabs from what we were just looking at. And here we see this one new one, sheet 28. So this is what I just made. So this is why we've done most of the demos today in desktop and not server. But here we go. So I've hit play, and if you can see, there they go, doing the same thing they were doing before. Changing length. Hello? Or not. Awesome. I think we should move on.
It's a very risky server. This is where a lot of our engineers are checking in code all day long. It's back in Seattle. But the point is, we have that play button on server, and that's going to ship with the feature.
It's not released yet, which is maybe a good thing.
Well, we've listened to you on the forums.
All right. So where are we on time? Okay. So.
Okay, so we hope this session's given you a taste of what Viz Animations can do for you in your work. This is only the tip of the iceberg, because animation automatically works for almost every action and almost every Viz type. There's no special coding or effort required. all you have to do is make sure you turn it on. So we hope this exciting new feature is going to help you see and understand your data in motion. Put that ending there.
So before we move to Q&A, a couple more things. After today's session, you will be able to access both this PowerPoint deck and the workbook containing all of today's demos. Of course, you'll need the alpha, or you'll need to wait till the real release to actually try the animations and see them in motion. We've also added a worst of animation workbook. And this workbook lays out in a bunch of tabs the things that don't animate, or things that don't work the best. We've done this in the interest of full transparency so that you can maybe have a better idea of like when you might not want to use animation in your work. And last off, there's a video version of how to create a bar chart race in 2 minutes in case you didn't remember everything I did and you want to try it on your own.
So once again, if you've enjoyed this talk and you want to learn more about using animations with purpose and intent, we recommend you go see Jock's talk at 4 p.m. today. Oh, and of course, please complete the session survey feedback in the TC19 app. Thank you.